He was on his way to Bratislava by bus. Outside the window, he could see a gloomy gray sky and a wide field covered in light fog. And it was quite different from the beautiful scenery of Europe that he had been thinking about until then. Bratislava was a close city, an hour and a half away from Vienna, so you could head to once you got used to the similar European street. Inside train stations or bus terminals in Europe, there is bound to be a bakery. Many people, both locals and tourists, often visit for breakfast. He also bought a sausage bread of the right size that was easy to take out and eat. The rustling sound the bread bag made was louder than he expected, so he was a little cautious. On one side of the street wall, torn leaflets were fluttering little by little in the wind. The streets, which were empty except for a few people walking by with stern faces, felt frighteningly cold. He walked nervously toward his next destination, and it looked quite different from the leisurely walking on the streets he had been doing until that time. The stairs up the hill continued endlessly, and when the horns of cars honking on the main street gradually faded and were barely audible, a large structure finally emerges. Standing by his camera in front of the immaculately symmetrical building, he expressed his immature delight. But before long, the frighteningly quiet gray monument begins to press down slowly and heavily on this immature visitor. In that way, the space was constantly playing silence. He felt strange and escaped from that unfamiliar silence under the pretext of not-so-severe hunger. He was always holding a camera, and it was because he couldn't get rid of the strange habit of struggling to organize the results after pressing the shutter whenever he wants to, without knowing the right technique about the photos. His main subjects include the following: long stretch of streets, large castles, and the areas where the buildings met the sky. Trams were also one of them, as they were not easily found in his country. He leaned low and tried to look at his rusty face as if it had been beaten by time. He couldn't read the worker's feelings at all with his drooping eyes and subtle smile. He clicked the shutter a few more times and then walked away, feeling something strange again. Some breweries in Europe also operate as restaurants, and the beer they sell is famous for not disappointing our expectations. As a person who knows how to enjoy alcohol, he had been praising the taste of clean beer throughout his time in Europe, and the beer of that day also satisfied him quite a lot. After the glass was almost half empty, the steak dish with rice was brought to the table. The properly cooked black Angus sirloin had an acceptable meat flavor and soft texture considering its hefty price. But even so, he later wondered if it would have been better if he had tried other foods that might have gone better with his beer. Anyway, he tried to swallow up the mysterious weirdness he felt throughout the trip with his meal. Travelers in winter Europe have to be busy, as darkness casts everywhere after 4 p.m. If you cannot think of an effective way to look around the city, it's a good option to go as high as you can. He walked up to the Bratislava castle and found a large forest in the southwest. All the leaves had fallen off and were dry when looking at each tree, but the forest composed of them was so dense that he was quite surprised. The sun has not completely gone over yet, but that forest will be pitch black. Finally, he visited the observation deck above the Donau River, where he could see Bratislava Castle in the opposite way. He saw a castle standing still, and a road full of cars moving wildly. It seemed as if time passed differently in the two places. He still doesn't know much about Bratislava. It's obvious that he can't understand the long accumulation of time in this place in just one day. The more you look at the city, the more it is filled with unknown things.